We are starting to fire here in the shop. See my breath. We woke up to 30 degrees this morning, and now it's 15 degrees as the sun's coming up. Really not showing, but it's coming up. Our high tomorrow is supposed to be 8 degrees with a minus wind chill of minus 31 degrees tomorrow. So we're probably not going to be out here tomorrow in the shop. So I thought we'd get some stuff done today. Come on back and we'll show you what we're going to do today after we get this fire going. I don't know if you can see it. I think you can. It's snowing inside the shop. We got a couple holes in the skylight up there that let the snow come in when it's blowing. And when we come in the morning, we'll probably have a little pile of snow here on the ground. We do all the time. But eventually we get those skylights either torn out or fixed. So as I wait for the fire to get going, I'll show you what we're working on today. We got this going. We're making a hidden Tang knife. We got a birthday coming up in the family, so we're using part of a deer antler. Now this antler, the person that's got the birthday coming up, this is off one of his deer. I think maybe his first deer. And we're going to use this for the handle. And we've got a little guard that we're going to make that goes about there. It's not going to be that big. It's just roughed out right now. And we've got the holes drilled in it that we're going to file out for the tang of the knife to go through. And this is what we got so far on the knife. I'm toying with doing a clip point, is why you see those red lines. But I don't know if I'm going to do the clip point or not. If I do, it'll probably be this profile here. And might look all right. We might go ahead and do that. But this is out of an old concrete cutting blade. That one up there. So this tang will slip through this guard and then into the knife handle there, kind of like that. And that's what she'll look like when she's done with that clip point, if we decide to do the clip point. So that's what we're working on today, because we won't want to be out here tomorrow. And we do got to get back to these cleavers and get these done, so that'll be an upcoming video soon. So let's get after it. Well, we've went from 15 to 40 degrees here in the shop. Feels much better. So we've got a little more work done on this knife blade. I'll show you what we got. We decided to go ahead and do the clip point on the end, and then we did a little surface sanding, and then we did some hand sanding. We took it to about 400 grit. We'll probably go to 700 later. But this is good enough to get some more stuff going. We're contemplating doing some file work here on the back of the blade. And then we obviously have to put an edge on it as well. But that's where we're going. For those of you who are used to seeing knife makers shove their blades into a big fiery forge, that's one way to do it. If you've got steel that isn't hard already, you'll have to forge it and heat treat it so it's hard. But we're doing what's called the stock removal method, where we don't have to forge the blade. We start with steel that's already hard, and we just remove the material that we don't need, of course, and shape the blade, cut the blade out, and we don't have to worry about hardening. But one thing you do have to worry about is overheating the steel and making it soft again, because if you heat the steel up too much through the sanding, grinding, whatever you're doing, and it cools off naturally, you're losing some of the temper in the steel. If you start out with really brittle steel, you'll have to make it a little bit softer. Say you start with a file, you'll have to soften that up a little bit, because otherwise if you were to drop it or something like that, there's a chance it could break because it's really brittle. Now this steel, being it was a saw blade, is not brittle because it's used to running at high speeds and hitting stuff, and it's not as hard as like a file steel. So we won't have to anneal this at all. I forget what the term is, but if you're starting with a super hard steel, you'd put it in the oven 400 degrees for 3 hours and then turn the oven off. Don't open the oven door. I do it overnight. And then the next morning when it's cooled on its own, you take it out. It'll be kind of a yellow color, and that'll bring you back down to the hardness that you want where you're not so brittle. But like I said, this blade we don't have to worry about. So we started on the guard here. We're opening up these holes that we drilled. So I usually start down in the second hole. I have these jeweler files that I use. So I start down in the second hole, and you just start kind of working your way back and forth a little bit, prying through it a little bit. You don't want to start in the top hole because then you get the top hole widened out too far. And then as you work your way through, then you can apply downward pressure and start connecting those holes with this file. This is a flat file. I have curved files, round files, all the different types of files. You can also see, if you can see that close, this side of the edge of the file is a little finer than that side, and it's usually that way. So when I first start, I use the finer edge on the file. Won't focus now, but you get the idea. We're just connecting those holes, and we're slowly gonna work our way opening that hole up until our tang fits through there fairly snugly. So you see we have opened up, connected all of our holes, and now we're going to start working on these edges with the flat side of the file, just little by little. As soon as we get that flat, we'll try pushing the tang through. The drill bit is already the size of the width of the tang, so we know we at least need to make that flat, and we at least need to go to the corners of this mark. So we can work on that a little bit, and then we'll start trying to fit the tang through the hole. It doesn't take as long as you would think because this is brass. It's a lot softer than steel, so it files fairly quickly. So you see we've got it to fit. Fits pretty good. Once the epoxy gets on there and we put it all together, it'll take that little bit of wobble we have out of it. So now we can just throw it together real quick to give you an idea what it's going to look like. So the guard is going to be sanded down some more, and then of course we're not sitting straight. So after the knife gets put together, we'll sand the edge of this guard down more to make it fit the knife better. But that's kind of what she's going to look like. So you get kind of an idea. I wanted this smooth up here so we could use this as a little thumb brace here, and it fits nicely. It's got a perfect curve to it for my thumb. Of course, it's not my knife, so hopefully it'll fit the young man that's getting it too. You can see here on the edges that we're going to file those corners so that sits down flush, or you won't see those little gaps in there. So we'll work on that. A little more fit and finish and get the edge on this blade, and we'll have a nice looking knife. All right, starting to come together. We've got the guard shined up a little bit. I put the boy's initials down here on the bottom. You can see that. It's kind of tough to see with the light shining on it. But we're going to work on getting the edge on this thing now so we can start putting this thing together. And then once it's epoxied together, we will true this guard up here, going real slow. We don't want to heat it up because that'll let the epoxy loose on it. And we might even do something back here. I'm not sure what I'll do back here, but maybe we will. We're doing some file work here on the back, and I'm doing what's called a rope pattern. So what I did is I marked it every millimeter, or centimeter, excuse me, every centimeter, and then I came through with a sharp edge file and filed on a 45-degree angle like this on every mark. And then once I get a fairly good groove in there, I bring my round jeweler's file, pretty small, and then we kind of round out the, what do you call it, the little trough we have in here. So get you a decent trough in there where your file will stay in it, and then get your round file, stay at a 45-degree angle, and then you want to go, staying at a 45-degree angle, you're rocking back and forth like this, and I'm using the edge of the vise as kind of a gauge of how far to go at this angle. And then on this side, I'm almost touching over here. So that's kind of what I'm using. And then you just work your way back and forth, staying at that 45-degree angle until your slot gets real smooth, and then you move on to the next one. Get it going, make it round first, and then start rotating in the slot. Just like that. We need to go a little bit further. Not quite smooth on the bottom yet. That looks good. Then we'll move to this last one here. If you've done this for a while, you can kind of guess on a 45-degree angle. It doesn't have to be perfect, as long as you get close. Now we'll start rotating back and forth. Like that. So then what you want to do is look on the sides and look at the depth of your file work. And if you have one that's too shallow, or if you've got 2 or 3 others that are deeper than the rest, you want to kind of make it match. So we'll take a look at this real quick. Pull it out of the vise. Look at it from the side. I have the 3rd notch back needs to go a little deeper. But on that side, they all look pretty good, except for the first one needs to go deeper on this side. So 3rd one and 1st one, we'll work on those. I have my little piece of leather in the vise, so I don't mess up my finish on that blade. So on this 3rd one, we're going to come back on my side a little bit. Oop, don't want to do that. I don't want to rotate to the other side because it's good on the other side. So just from this side to the middle. Now this one needs to go this way and not this way. So I'll start flat and I'll rotate to the other side. So let me get my 320 grit sandpaper here, and we're just going to hit the tops of this because I had that little scratch, and that takes it right out. And I'm going to go over the side just a little bit to take any sharp edge off. So now we'll come in with our 400 grit and do the same. And that'll shine that edge back up. We ground a lot of the blade this way. Now, if you've seen in our other videos, we want to get all the sand marks going this way. So we'll get the tip of this here real quick, shine it up. So let's take a look at our depth again. So we look good on this side with this third notch here. And then the first notch looks good also. So we're right on the money. There's what that looks like. Kind of a ropey looking pattern there. It's kind of hard to see, but boy, it's getting cold outside. The wood stove is the only thing making it tolerable in here. Glad we're not doing this tomorrow. That's why I'm getting her done today. We're going to start getting the edge on this. I got my jig set up on my belt sander. If you haven't seen it before, this is kind of my hollow grinding jig. Puts me up here on the round part of the wheel where we get kind of a hollow grind. So we're going to get after this and get an edge on this thing. So I wanted to show you how this works. I have this little flat surface here that I can hold the knife blade against, and then I run it up against the wheel, and then I put even pressure all the way across as we move on the blade. And I always start on the tip because that one's going to heat up the fastest. So if I come this way, I'm bringing heat with me. If I start this way, as it starts heating up, I'm moving away from the tip. And this is what it looks like just on the initial start. We're nowhere near being done, but you can see it gives you a nice clean edge all the way across. I held a little longer on this end here. You can see it's a little bit wider, and that's what you got to watch when you're grinding. You can see the tip is kind of narrow, but that's fine. That tip I can grind fairly quickly. I don't want to put too much heat on it. But we'll work this side so we're almost to the center, and then we'll switch over and do this side. And then when you're getting close to being done, you want to look at it from the end, and you'll look and compare the grind marks and make sure they're even on both sides. And you'll do the same over here, and that'll tell you whether you're in the middle. And if you're not quite in the middle, you just do a little bit more on one side or the other. Oh, and I put the piece of tape on here to keep from getting superficial scratches on my blade, because as the metal builds up, especially if I was going metal to metal, you can get little scratches out here. And then once we get some buildup maybe on here, I'll replace this piece of tape, and then I wipe it off pretty frequently too. Getting a little further, you can see we got a little deeper on the tip. We're almost there. We evened it up further to the back. We have a little bit more, so I'm going to go a little faster on the back, a little slower on the middle, and we got to take the tip just a little further so it evens it out. I also do this barehanded so I can feel the heat in the blade. Again, we don't want to overheat that metal and lose the hardness. So if it starts getting hot on my fingers, I know I need to speed up or stop for a little bit. Okay, we've reached the middle on both sides, and we have a razor sharp edge. And we've checked the ends, our grinds are even on both sides, on front and back. So what we got to do, I don't know if you can see it because this thing is not focusing very well, but there's kind of a rolled edge on the outside of that blade, on the very tip of the edge, and we want to refine that edge to where it's not so jagged. So we'll put that on a stone and we'll take that little roll off of it, and that will true up that edge and make it a little bit smoother to where it won't kind of hang up. Because like right now, if you were to cut like a piece of cloth or something with this, you would feel it hanging up because that edge has got just a little fine, little jagged edge on it. So we'll take care of that. And even though we were cleaning that little surface off quite a bit, we still got some superficial scratches that you can see there. So we'll take care of those too. All right, we've got that edge refined, got that little roll off of it, and we've got the superficial scratches back out of the blade. So we're going to get this all taped up so it protects that finish, and we're going to go inside and start getting ready to put this thing together. Okay, we are getting ready to do some epoxy work. We've got the blade all taped up all the way to the edge, so any epoxy that squeezes out we can keep off of the blade. We've got the guard in the position that we like, the orientation with the right side out towards the blade. You can see we've cut or ground a couple notches into the Tang here, and that's going to help it hold on to the epoxy when it's hard, so this thing won't just come slipping out of the epoxy, which probably wouldn't happen anyway, but that gives us a little insurance. We've also came inside here, inside the hole, inside the antler, with a Dremel tool, and we've cut some grooves down in there. So the epoxy, which again probably wouldn't happen, but just gives a little insurance, it gives something for that epoxy to hold on, so it's not just a smooth cylinder of epoxy in there. It's kind of rough because the drill bit leaves score marks in there, so it probably wouldn't happen, but again, insurance. So we are ready to mix some epoxy, and once we get this thing together, we've got to make sure everything's straight and in line where we want it, and then we'll have to sit here and pretty much hold this thing like this until it sets up enough to where we can put it down. But this stuff's supposed to cure in 5 minutes, but it usually takes just a hair longer than that, but it shouldn't be too bad. So we're going to mix the epoxy here in the plate. I've got a little piece of wood that I mix with, and then we'll scoop it up and pour it little by little into that antler, into that hole. And you don't want to fill your hole all the way up, because remember that Tang's got to go in there. If you fill it all the way up, you're going to have a mess of epoxy coming out of there once you put it on. You want to make sure you get a little epoxy on here too, so it will hold your guard in place, and a little bit of epoxy will squeeze up into that crack in there and hold everything nice and tight. So I'm going to get after it. So we've got all the epoxy in the handle, and we hit it just perfectly. We didn't have a lot squeezing out, but we did see it come to the top, and we had a little bit squeeze out. So I just come around here with a Q-tip with a little bit of alcohol on it, and I've already cleaned off of the guard pretty much. So I'm just getting the stuff that's kind of spilled over onto the tape here. That way when I pull the tape off, it'll come off clean. But I want to make sure there's nothing on the guard either. So I hit it with the alcohol and then turn the Q-tip around and then kind of dry it off. And then I go to the other side and do the same thing. The alcohol acts as a solvent for the epoxy. You don't want to get a bunch of it in there where it's running down inside, because it'll weaken your epoxy. But just enough to wipe the surface, because you don't want any epoxy over onto the surface because it'll give it a weird color. So put it on and then dry it off with the dry side of the Q-tip. So this is pretty much ready to go. It's everything's together, everything's straight in line where I'd like it. The guard is straight as far as the little bit of gap it got between that and the Tang. We're okay there. I think we're doing pretty good. I got a little more squeeze out right here in this corner I'm going to try to address. Don't want any excess alcohol on there. Turn it around, dry it off. So I think it's all over but the setup. So we're going to sit and hold this for a good 15 probably minutes, maybe 20, to where nothing moves around anymore and everything's nice and set. I think what I'm going to try to do right now is pull this blue tape off while everything's still kind of fresh, to where it's not like glued on. We're going to pull this tape off of the handle and pull any loose epoxy off with it. Coming off fairly easily. And that worked out really nice. We didn't get epoxy all over the handle. Because if we get epoxy on that handle, when we go to finish it, it might finish into like a different color, which we don't want because it'll kind of seal it. But I want to do one more wipe of the top up here, because I see a little dullness. Not quite as shiny there. Means it's got a little epoxy on it. And then as that alcohol dries, I can see that it's gone. So a little more on this side. And then we'll dry it off. Perfect. So, just got to hold on to it for a while now. And then we'll pull the tape off and see what she looks like. Now the epoxy I'm using is this 2-part epoxy JB clear weld. Much bigger amounts than what you would get in one of those little plunger deals. And it's been working out pretty good. Another little trick too, if you get just a little bead of epoxy there that the Q-tip won't quite get you a toothpick and just pull that bead out of there while it's still mobile. And then if any gets over onto the guard, just hit it with a little more alcohol. And that'll help get that little tiny bit of squeeze out right there. Make it look a lot cleaner when you're done if you don't have a little bead of epoxy poking up through there. Well, it's the next morning. We are minus 6 degrees. Supposed to be only a high of 9 today with a wind chill of minus 31. We got our knife all unwrapped, and that's what she looks like, folks. We've got a little more fit and finish to do on it, but I won't bother you with that. We're going to trim down this guard because it's too wide on the sides. So we'll trim it down a little closer here and probably bring this edge up a little bit. And then we'll spray the handle with Varathane, make it shine up. But I won't bother you with those details. I'm going to do another leather video when I make the sheets for this in the next couple days, because I haven't done one of those in a while. And you'll get to see the finished product on that. So stay tuned. It's going to be a cold day today. I don't know that me and Brandy are even going to get out the door today. But we got a lot of soup bones in the freezer we're probably going to take care of and make some vegetable beef soup for dinner. Be a nice dinner on a cold day. What do you think, Brandy? Vegetable beef stew or soup for dinner? Well, you probably won't get any, but... All right, we'll see you guys. Stay safe, stay healthy. We love you. Bye.